A very warm welcome to another video. Today we are discussing the topic of doping in triathlon, and this is a 2013 article from the scientific journal PLOS ONE, and this is open access, freely available for anyone. So I'll link it in the study, or I'll link the study in the description below for anyone who's keen to go and have their own look at it in their own time. Essentially, though, the findings are quite alarming. Now, this is regarding age group doping. This has nothing to do with the pros, but I'm sure many of you will be. Some will be shocked. Others may not be so shocked as to just how the actual prevalence is. As to what this study kind of uncovered regarding doping in age group triathlon. So the title is Associations Between Physical and Cognitive Doping, a cross-sectional study in 2000. This was 2,997, so almost 3,000 triathletes. Here are the authors, and it was conducted by the Department of Sports Medicine, Rehabilitation and Disease Prevention at Johannes Gutenberg University in Germany. So we'll read through the abstract because this will give us the main gist of the article. For anyone who's kind of keen just on the basic information and what they uncovered, this will be it. However, if you do want to stay with me, we'll go through the whole article. I'll give you my thoughts as we kind of go along, and we'll really unpack this on a deeper level. So starting with the abstract. So the purpose of the study itself, this study assessed for the first time prevalence estimates for physical and cognitive doping within a single collective of athletes using the randomized response technique, or RRT. Furthermore, associations between the use of legal and freely available substances to improve physical and cognitive performance or enhancement, and illicit or banned substances to improve physical and cognitive performance, which is classified as doping, of course, were examined. The methods: an anonymous questionnaire using the unrelated question RRT. So this is a technique in which essentially it allows the respondent to remain anonymous, and it's a little bit of a psychological one. However, we'll dive into that when we get into the actual methodology of the study. So this RRT was used to survey 2,997 recreational triathletes in three sports events. So this was at Ironman Frankfurt, Regensburg, and but I can't even say Wiesbaden, and my pronunciation of that are obviously going to be quite average. But these are all events in Germany. Prior to this study, this survey, statistical power analyses were performed to determine sample size. Logistic regression was used to predict physical and cognitive enhancement, and the bootstrap method was used to evaluate differences between the estimated prevalences of physical and cognitive doping and the results. Now, this is what's quite interesting. So 2,987 questionnaires were returned, and this is 99.7%. So a high response to the actual questionnaire, which is quite good in terms of the accuracy of the study. 12-month prevalences for physical and cognitive doping were 13% and 15.1% respectively. So 13% for physical doping and 15% respectively. And we'll get into exactly what that means in the study. So the prevalence estimate for physical doping was significantly higher in athletes who also used physical enhancers, as well as in athletes who took part in the European Championship in Frankfurt compared to those who did not. Of course, this is a championship event, which makes sense as to, why that would attract, I guess, while not morally correct, a higher level of performance enhancing that's not so legal. The prevalence estimate for cognitive doping was significantly higher in athletes who also used physical and cognitive enhancers. Moreover, the use of physical and cognitive enhancers was significantly associated, and also the use of physical and cognitive doping were associated too. So essentially what that's saying is that if we go back up here and look at the methods, so these enhancers versus actual doping, I guess, or the purpose. So, physical and cognitive enhancement, or illicit and banned substances, which is doping. And I guess what they're doing is they're suggesting, or what they've found, is that athletes who use legal enhancers are actually more likely to also be using illegal or doping enhancements as well. Of course, this is by no means saying that all athletes who use legal enhancers are going to then go on, as a pathway to then therefore use it or use doping techniques. However, it is suggesting that it's kind of like a pathway, or these legal drugs can act, I guess, as a pathway drug to, illegal drugs. So the discussion, the use of substances to improve performance and cognitive performance were associated on both levels of legality, enhancement versus doping, suggesting that athletes do not use substances for a specific goal, but may have a general propensity to enhance. This finding is important for understanding why people use such substances. Consequently, more effective prevention programs against substance use and doping could be developed. So that's the abstract. Obviously, the findings are quite alarming regarding 13% for physical doping and 15% for cognitive doping. And this is not just supplementation, this is the findings for doping, which is, quite alarming. So let's read through the study now if anyone's interested in a more deep dive analysis to how they actually conducted it, some of the intricacies or nuances around it, the accuracy around this whole study itself, and what it really means in terms of, and then even breaking it down between the events too. So let's start with the introduction. So a growing concern in today's society is the consumption of substances to increase performance or cognitive performance. For example, the use of drugs such as anabolic steroids in professional sports has long been a concern. In order to combat physical doping in professional sports, the World Anti-Doping Agency, WADA, annually lists banned substances. However, physical doping is not only observed in elite athletes, but also in recreational athletes. This would be our age group triathletes. Especially in fitness sports, high prevalences between 5 to 20% have been revealed for the use of physical performance-enhancing substances, which is, pretty high, up to 20%, even in just the age group categories. Besides illicit or banned drugs, athletes also consume legal and freely available substances such as analgesics or analgesia, like painkillers, caffeine, and other ergonomic aids, creatine, vitamins, minerals, carbohydrates, proteins. Obviously, none of these things are banned, which may also improve physical performance, of course. It is of particular concern that these nutritional supplements have been shown to fail tests for safety, purity, and quality of ingredients, and may contain prohibited substances. And this is, of course, some, I guess, sports supplements have been tainted in the past. There was the famous case of Beth McKenzie, the professional female Ironman athlete who tested positive for ostarine, which is a SARM, a selective androgen receptor modulator. So that this is a compound which has very selective effects on the androgen receptor to kind of mimic the effects of testosterone, like testosterone would have, without the side effects of beard growth, body hair, acne, all that kind of stuff. So what that was actually found, or what it was discovered, is that a salt tablet was tainted with ostarine, and there was actually a few athletes who actually failed doping tests because they were taking this tainted supplement. So you got to be really careful with this stuff, guys. In order to distinguish between these two levels of substance consumption, we use the term physical doping to refer to the former case, which is things such as testosterone, EPO, growth hormone, all that kind of stuff. That is the intake of illicit or banned substances to improve physical performance in sports, whereas the expression of physical enhancement will be used to refer to the intake of legal or freely available substances to improve sports performance. So besides the use of substances and methods to improve physical performance in sports, there is also a growing trend in our society to improve cognitive functions such as memory, attention, learning, performance, or mood by the intake of substances. So cognitive doping can include illicit substances, for example, cocaine or amphetamines, and prescription drugs psychological and neuro enhancement, such as stimulants, so methylphenidate and amphetamines, antidepressants, even beta blockers or modafinil. Now, beta blockers aren't banned in particular sports. They are only banned for particular sports such as like shooting, darts, pool, stuff like that. Beta blockers aren't banned in endurance sports like triathlon. Antidepressants, most antidepressants, I'm not actually aware of particular antidepressants which are banned, but mostly they are not. However, of course, Adderall, Ritalin, those ADHD medications, and modafinil certainly are banned. And it's interesting that they separate them or even put them in their own category of cognitive doping, because taking something like Adderall or modafinil is physically very enhancing on the day of competition, because you're going to have a heightened state of alertness, of course. So there's the cognitive side of things, which is therefore going to delay the perception of fatigue, and therefore even the increase in adrenaline signaling that comes with these substances is going to be physically performance enhancing as well, much like caffeine is. So they have kind of put them into two different categories. However, realize, of course, there is crossover between those categories. It's not just black and white. And I want to just kind of stop on this point, or just at this point, and say that even if an athlete does admit to or is taking performance enhancing drugs, and a common one, for example, is testosterone. So realize, of course, over the span of and this is particularly in male or older male age group athletes, over the span of, the lifetime, testosterone levels will peak around 20 to 30 years of age. So somewhere in that realm, and then gradually decline as an athlete gets older. You can go to your doctor. If you're, for example, 50 years old, you go to your doctor, you have low levels of testosterone, which medically justify a prescription for exogenous testosterone or testosterone replacement therapy. That is still classified as doping, even though your doctor recommends you take that medication. So even though it's for your health, it's still going to be considered doping. And this is why I think that, particularly in the older age groups, 40 onwards, the use of TRT or testosterone replacement therapy is widespread. And many athletes realize that it's illegal, but you're never going to receive a therapeutic use exemption unless you have, for example, an organic deficiency, which is very uncommon. Just having a deficiency in and of itself isn't enough. So many are aware and just kind of don't care, because they're like, well, I'm not really going to get tested, whatever. I'm just doing it. It's just for fun anyway. Like, I'm doing triathlons for enjoyment. Who cares? And they justify it. Others aren't even aware, because they do think that if my doctor prescribed it to me, then it's legal, but it's actually not. So in terms of doping in sports, so an important distinction there. So we'll continue on. Prevalences for the use of such cognitive enhancing substances range from 1.2% to 35% among German and American students. So obviously cognitive enhancement in the student, from the student side of things, is very big, particularly at universities, and estimated to be among 20% among readers of the journal Nature, which is an interesting little side note there. 19.9% among surgeons, and 5% among office workers in Germany. And this is an important thing as well. Among the workplace, performance-enhancing substances are widely used. And even things like, that note of around 20% among surgeons. Excuse me. If I was going in for surgery and it was a brain surgery or a very intricate, highly risky surgery, and I could have a surgeon who was a little bit fatigued or, not on top of his game, and then he took a medication which he knows enhances his alertness, enhances his concentration, and will therefore improve the outcomes or the likely outcomes of that surgery, I am going to be more inclined to say, yeah, I'd rather my surgeon be neurologically enhanced to a safe point, if that's how it was as easy as that. But obviously there's nuance to that. So, don't take that out of context. So anyway, we'll kind of skip through to some of the more points, because they're kind of going on a little bit of a tangent here. So this is an example of their survey that they conducted. So it's kind of like, please consider a certain birthday, yours, your mother's, etc. Is this birthday in the first of the month from, the 1st to the 10th day? If yes, please proceed to question A. If no, proceed to question B. So if yes, proceed to question A. Is the birthday in the first half of the year? Yes or no? Question B, and this is why it's like this kind of random questions type survey. Have you ever used substances which can only be prescribed by a doctor, available in a pharmacy, or bought on the black market? Example, anabolic steroids, EPO or erythropoietin, stimulants, growth hormone, etc., to enhance your physical performance during the last 12 months. So completely unrelated questions, but this is why it's this kind of randomized setup. And the same thing down here as well. Whether you fall between the 11th and the 12th, and the 20th day, some random question, and then a more direct question about cognitive enhancement. So again, we'll kind of skip through a little bit about this. However, this was the breakdown of, this is where the surveys came from. So Frankfurt European Championships, Regenberg or Regenberg, and Wiesbaden, and again, sorry for my pronunciation, European 70.3 Championship. And then they also, did things like age, height, weight, BMI. They also looked at a few things about training characteristics, so years of training, hours of training, kilometers per week, bike, running, swimming. Do they have a structured training plan or not, etc. And we can skip through the... Actually, no, this is quite interesting regarding the results themselves. So between the individual locations, and this is so overall cognitive enhancement, yes or no, the relative out of the respondents. So for enhancement, remember this is not doping, but this is just enhancement. 66.7% relative was yes, 10% relative no, and actually no, a little bit confusing right there. But anyway, we'll go through to the discussion and really kind of unpack what all these results mean. So the present survey examined the use of substances to improve physical and cognitive performance in a large collection of recreational triathletes. Specifically, this study assessed the prevalence of using physical and cognitive enhancers and freely, i.e. legal and freely available substances, as well as prevalence of physical and cognitive doping, i.e. illicit or banned substances or pharmaceuticals, within the same sample. This design allowed us to examine whether the athlete who uses substances to improve physical performance would also use substances to enhance cognitive performance and vice versa. To our knowledge, this has not been addressed before. The high response rate of 99.7% was achieved for several reasons. Firstly, the study was performed during the registration procedure in the race office, through which all recreational athletes had to pass, and where they had enough time to complete the survey. Furthermore, the athletes were informed in advance by mail about the survey. Second, a black box was placed in the race office where the athletes had to return the filled-in questionnaires. The use of this box emphasized anonymity of the participants, so their ability to remain anonymous, as there is a visual separation between the completed questionnaires and the researchers. The response rates for the RRT questions concerning physical and cognitive doping were 90.5% and 91.6% respectively, and 5.4% of the athletes stopped completing the questionnaire directly before the sensitive part. And this may have somewhat biased the present estimates, of course. Therefore, it is possible that the prevalence of physical and cognitive doping, 13% and 15.1%, underestimated the true prevalences. So even though they had a high response status, realized that some athletes got to these questions and actually didn't answer them. And why would you not answer them if you were not otherwise doing something that you kind of didn't want to disclose? So even though they got these physical actual doping, 13%, 15% for cognitive doping, it may well have been higher than that. So very interesting. So we'll scoot down and go, I guess there's a bit more of a conclusion down here. So in summary, the present study is the first investigation exploring the gateway hypothesis for both physical and cognitive doping. Moreover, randomized response estimates were used for the first time to address a potential association between doping and legal substance use. Furthermore, we highlight that substance use to improve physical performance and substance use to improve cognitive performance are strongly related to each other, opening a new field for future studies. Finally, we want to stress that the results of this study are limited to a specific population, namely the collective of long and half-distance triathletes. In other populations, for example, non-endurance athletes, professional athletes, or non-athletes, the association between these two types of enhancements will be quite different, of course. So, what do I think about this study? Now, obviously, there are limitations to this study in general. Like anything, not all studies will be 100% accurate. However, I think they've done a really good job here in regards to allowing athletes to remain anonymous, which encourages participation and disclosure of information that they otherwise wouldn't if they were known to be, or they knew that they were going to be known, or their answers could be tied back to them. I also think that obviously this is only in Germany itself. So is this reflective of the entire population of Ironman triathletes regarding the world? Would this correlate to Australia, America, the Asian countries, and the rest of the European countries? Do we know? Obviously, there is a worldwide representation at these events anyway. So there's a lot of questions and things which, essentially mean that we do need to take these results for what they are worth. They are specific results for these specific events. However, I think at the end of the day, it's an eye-opener because a lot of athletes are doping in the age group ranks. And when I say a lot, I mean, whether it's 5%, whether it's 10%, whether it's 20%, ideally, a clean athlete wants to go to an event knowing that no one's doping, knowing that it's a level playing field. However, unfortunately, I don't think that's the case, and this study really does prove it. And I'm always careful when I do, talk about things like doping in sports, not to point any fingers and not to talk about things which aren't proven, whether it's one specific athlete who people think, oh, they're doping, but do we have proof? No, because at the end of the day, they may be, but how can we say that for sure? And therefore, it's very unprofessional to go ahead and draw rumors or even associate them with doping because, it's not proven. Until things are proven, we should be careful not to, point fingers. But this is interesting. And we know that Ironman is under the wider code. We know also that Ironman, however, being a for-profit organization, needs to fund testing of athletes at events. And one test itself can be in the realm of $5,000 plus US dollars. And we know that, obviously Ironman have gone through difficult times recently. Has their testing declined? Has it improved? I would say it's probably not necessarily improved. And for an organization that is interested in making money, this is not a government organization that is just, we're going to test every single athlete or whatever. This is, we need to fund the testing. You also need to look at it from the aspect of, if Ironman did test a whole bunch and a whole bunch of athletes were uncovered, well, they have to disclose that information to the public. Does it look good for their brand? No. So I'm not being pessimistic about, all of this. However, just realize that it's a company, and whilst they are, doing their best to prevent doping in their organization or in their racing and create a level playing field, there's so many competitors, it'd be so difficult to do truly. Obviously, they can only ever do random testing. And I think that even though athletes are, or age group athletes, there are a particular proportion of them who will be doping, realize too that, they may not even consider that doping from their moral compass. If it's just replacing of a hormone that otherwise improves their health, is it doping? Well, technically, yeah. But is it good for their health? Also, probably, yeah. So, I think it's one of those unavoidable things. Unless you tested every single athlete, you'd never really stamp it out. And I don't know. What do you guys think? What do you guys think of this survey? I think at the end of the day, it's very eye-opening, and it does kind of blow a lid on how prevalent this is, even in the age group ranks. I think as well, you need to keep in mind that not all of these athletes are intentionally doing it for performance enhancement or just to win an age group world championship or to win a particular race or to try and cheat the field. They're also genuinely presenting to their doctors with deficiencies and genuinely improving their health through some medications which just happen to be illegal. And they're like, well, what's more important, my health or an Ironman race? I don't really care. I'm just going to go do the race anyway. If they test me, whatever, so keep that in mind, guys. And yeah, I didn't think that the responses would be almost 1 in 7, but that's what it is. So, and this is back in 2013 as well. Remember, during COVID, during the lockdowns, a lot of this testing and stuff kind of went out the door, and maybe it might have increased in prevalence. For context, this is only involving age groupers. This makes no mention of the professionals, so we can't, just directly correlate that across and draw inferences there. Keep it in context. Age group athletes only. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know any insights you have, what your moral stance is on some of this stuff, and post any comments, questions below. Appreciate all engagement on the videos. It helps to, boost the algorithm, etc. Take care, guys. Happy training, and I'll see everyone in the next video. A very